Welcome to Dr. Mensch, the radio show that takes a real, compassionate look at mental health from A to Z. Join child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtstein each week as we explore topics that matter: autism, ADHD, anxiety, depression, OCD, schizophrenia, behavioral challenges, neurodevelopmental disorders, and more. No stigma, no judgment. Just honest conversations, new therapies, breakthrough treatments, and real solutions for real people. Mental health is not a weakness. It's a treatable medical condition, and help is available. Join the conversation now by calling the studio at 888-994-4995, Studio A. This is Dr. Mensch, where hope and healing begin.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dr. Gil Lichtstein, aka Dr. Mensch, here from beautiful, sunny Boca Raton, Florida, where it's about 80 degrees, and it sucks for everybody out there who's dealing with cold and snow. I'm a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. I have a private clinical practice in Boca Raton, Florida. My office is located at 7100 West Camino Real, Suite 404 in Boca Raton. And my phone number is 561-300-4052. Today I want to talk a little bit about social media, the news, and its impact on individuals' mental health. I'm in my late 50s, so I grew up in the 70s when there was no computers. I went to the Apple store the other day and I was talking to one of the salespeople and saying, hey, I remember my first computer, which was the Apple IIe or Apple IIc, that was out in like the early to mid 80s. But when I grew up, there was no PlayStation, there was Atari, or even before Atari, like Pong, and there was definitely no social media, there was no cell phones, there was no, big screen TVs. This is even before Beta and VHS and Betamax. You had to get up and flip the channels on your TV, and so I didn't grow up with YouTube and Twitter and Snapchat and all that. And so I don't have a big social media presence. I mean, I have a website, but you're not going to find me on Twitter and Snapchat and what's the one from China that everybody's is TikTok. You're not going to find me on the Instagram. I'm not on that, and I don't even know how to post. But I know it's a big thing in today's world. Everybody has to post things on their social media. People telling you where they are, what they're doing. I don't personally have time in my day to do all those postings, and quite honestly, do I need to pay somebody to do that? I have better use of my money than pay someone to post on my Facebook page and I'm in a bathroom, or that I'm here or that I'm there. Like, no one really, why would someone care? But nonetheless, in today's world, especially Gen Zs and millennials and whatever next generation after Gen Zs, they grew up, I would say, as long as you're, say, under the age of 30 and below, you grew up in the social media age, the smartphone age, where you can be found at any time. If you wanted to disappear, it's kind of hard. Back when I was growing up, if you wanted to vanish, you could. I remember, when Star Wars, the original Star Wars made in 1977, I went to the movie theater with my friends, and I remember I would put in 25 cents in a payphone and call my mom, hey, pick us up. There were no cell phones. This is even before beepers. But today, it's kind of hard to kind of be anonymous and vanish, because you can be found, located almost anywhere at any time. There's good things to that, and there's not so good things to that. But in terms of, especially since COVID, where social media kind of exploded, there's been a lot of negative impacts on people's mental health, and going into then beyond that with the media. Forget about social media, but like news media, which also I guess gets broadcast and disseminated through various social media, applications. That there's a lot of just gloom and doom and negativity, and it's gotten to the point, like for me personally, that I don't really, or try to avoid watching the news as much as possible, because, when I turn it on, and again, it doesn't matter whether, nowadays, where you are politically, because, if you watch CNN or MSNBC, you're liberal, and if you watch Fox or Newsmax, you're a Trumper. Forget about all that. I think that this applies, equally well to whatever news outlet you're watching, whether it's the networks, local networks, or cable news. That I turn on the news and all I hear is like just gloom and doom, how everything's terrible, how the United States sucks, and how this sucks and how this stinks, and how the president's terrible and this person's terrible. And I don't want to hear it. I like to hear some good things that are happening. I like to hear that there are good things that people do, instead of listening to all the negativity. I mean, for example, the events that happened in Minnesota with ICE, and you turn on the media and they portray ICE as like the Gestapo, and to me that's kind of hits really personally, because having extended family that died in the Holocaust, and to equate ICE with the Gestapo, and you hear it over and over again, to me is just kind of gloom and doom, and just it just makes me, and I can imagine a lot of other people, just think very just negative, and it's depressing. From my own personal experience, I'm going to say this was about a year ago, or maybe a little over a year ago. It was soon after the election, and President Trump won the election, whether you like him or not. And I remember I was going to visit my mom. She was in rehab. She had just broken her hip, and I was visiting her, and we were talking. And my mom doesn't care for President Trump, and she knows that I voted for him. So we always had this kind of inside jokes and banter about it. So we were talking, and then a visitor comes into the room, and it happens to be some distant cousin of mine who I had actually never met before. But I heard her name. I knew she was a snowbird and down here, and she was from New York, but I've never met her. And so she walks in the room. My mom has known her, and I introduced myself, and she, when we started talking, and then my mom, kind of made some inside joke with me about President Trump, and we were kind of laughing, and that kind of just like set my cousin off. I just started accusing me of being a Nazi supporter and supporting Adolf Hitler, and that I advocate for people being put in concentration camps. And I'm trying to just reason with this person and try to like, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me, let's get to know each other. And I'm, instead of saying, that she's crazy or this, I'm like, hey, listen, I don't agree with you. These are my opinions. You have your opinions, and that's fine. We can disagree. I don't agree with anything you're saying, but I respect what you're saying. Let's talk about something else. She didn't want to. And so after about 5 more minutes of her just kind of ranting endlessly, to the point where I felt maybe she needed like to be on medication. She was really just delusional and just rambling. She actually got up and left and just said, like, I don't want to be around you. I'm very uncomfortable around you. I'm leaving. And I told my mom that I don't want to have anything to do with this person if she doesn't want to get to know me, because simply I voted for Donald Trump. Like that was a crime of the century. But it's the impact of social media and the media that I think really, cemented this person to really truly think what she thought, and I wonder what basis she had, what rational or logical basis she had to make these opinions. But again, the thing is, if you, like, I tell this to my patients, like, for example, kids with ADHD, I think, kids with ADHD are impulsive, oppositional, they act out. Do they do it intentionally or maliciously? No, they have impulse discontrol. It's part of their illness. They can't control themselves. They're not like intentionally cruel or mean. They don't want to intentionally hurt people, at least most of them. I mean, there are some exceptions, but if a child constantly hears from their parents, "You're stupid, why don't you act like your brother, why can't you be normal, why can't you act like a 12-year-old, why do you have to act like a 2-year-old, why do you keep getting D's and C's in school, you're stupid," I mean, you hear it long enough, you're going to believe it. I give the example also, like I remember back in the 2000s when you had the whole steroid scandal in baseball, and you had these congressional hearings, and you had baseball players where there was evidence that they used steroids, and they're going in front of Congress saying, "I never used steroids," because again, you think something or you hear something or think something long enough, you're going to believe it to be true, even though it's patently false. So this is kind of the issues I have with the media, the news media and social media, is they're kind of trying to perpetuate certain ideas, and they say it. Some of it may be true, others may not be true, but people get captured. Social media is kind of very influential. It's kind of like, I don't say kind of like a drug, but it's kind of like when you go to a casino and you may win the slot machine once every 4 or 5 times, but that kind of reinforces the behavior. Social media kind of has that effect where it captivates people and they start sending a message, people start believing it, even though it may not be true. And it can kind of be very difficult. Like my cousin, I mean, when she kind of went on her rant to me and started saying these things, these kind of hurtful things that, telling me that I'm a Nazi, or I support a Nazi, or that I support Adolf Hitler. It's like, okay, I'm Jewish like you are. I mean, that's kind of insulting to say to me that I support Adolf Hitler, but she truly believed it. She believed it to be true. And I was convinced that there was nothing that I could say or do that would convince her otherwise. And so I just got to the point where, when someone's like that, when is in a delusional state, you kind of calling them, "Oh, you're crazy," doesn't help matters, but feeding into delusion doesn't help matters either. So you kind of got to toe the line. And so I was trying to like, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way. I don't agree with you, but I respect what you're saying. Let's try to change gears. But she didn't want anything of that. She just said, "Hey, if you don't agree with me, I'm out of here," and she left. So, unfortunately, today what I'm finding is, people have become so polarized to the point where it, gets them really angry, emotional, and sometimes to the point where they're irrational, difficult to deal with, speak to, or they may just not want to be around people that don't agree with them because they've gotten to believe certain things to be true when in fact it may not. So on that note, we will take a quick commercial break and we'll be back momentarily.
What happens when the mind of a healer crosses over into the darkness of the human soul? From authors David Icovetti, Dr. Gil Lichtstein, and Yolanda DeLuca comes a chilling psychological thriller, Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil. This gripping novel follows a respected Boca Raton psychiatrist who secretly descends into madness, transforming into a modern-day king of the underworld. Inspired by true events and Dr. Gil's childhood connection to a mob family, this story blurs the line between sanity and evil, genius and destruction. Unforgettable, disturbing, impossible to put down. Get your copy today on Amazon.com. Dr. Mensch, A Prescription for Evil, a 2020 psychological crime thriller. You're listening to Dr. Mensch with child and adolescent psychiatrist Dr. Gil Lichtstein. For a copy of his powerful new book, Dr. Mensch's Prescription for Evil, visit Amazon.com. For more information or to schedule a consultation, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. Now, let's get back to the show.
Welcome back. I don't want to come across as some person who's saying social media is terrible or toxic. There are good parts to it, and I'll get to it. But it's a lot of it is I think how people utilize it, and for whether it's for bad ulterior motives or it's the same thing with, again, in my opinion, like with gun control. And whenever we have a mass shooting, we got to have stricter gun laws. But there are certain cities that have very tough gun laws, like New York City or Chicago. I'm from Chicago, and I remember growing up, Chicago had one of the most toughest gun laws, but yet murder is rampant, and criminals are going to be able to find guns no matter how tough or strict gun laws are. And I believe like guns don't have 2 or 4 legs. It's people who use the guns for the wrong reasons. That's when problems arise. Again, I'm not going to say that social media actively kills people, but social media has been a venue where you can have cyberbullying, and that's led to people unfortunately committing suicide. But there's a good side to social media, and a lot of it is related to how people choose to use it. I didn't watch the Grammy Awards, when it was on a couple weeks ago, because, the last few years these award shows have become a political tool, and to me it's like, hey, I want to watch the Academy Awards. I want to listen to watch the Emmys or Grammys and see people win their awards for their acting or music skills. You know what? That's not the venue or the time to get up on a stage and you just won best actor, actress, or best song, or best musical play, and to start saying F this or screw this, or you know what? There is another time and place to discuss that. Maybe go to Congress, go talk to your local representative, not at Academy Awards or the Grammys, or even the Olympics, the Australian Open that took place back in last month. I remember there was a local tennis player, Amanda Anisimova. She's from North Miami Beach. She's a local South Floridian. She's rising up in the ranks of the women's rankings, and I think she had just won, I don't know if it was a quarterfinal match or a 4th round match, and there was a reporter who just kept asking her questions that had nothing to do with tennis about what's your thoughts about the current political scene in the United States and how things are in the country over the past year since the new administration's taken over. And she definitely said, listen, I'm proud American. I'm very proud of one of my accomplishments. I was born here. I'm grateful. My parents are immigrants. It's great to see American women getting into the top 10 in women's tennis. And the reporter kept pressing her, and she responded that type of questions was irrelevant to, what this press conference is about. And that was a perfect answer. It's how we choose to use media, and Amanda's, I think that's her name, Amanda Anisimova's, or Anna or Amanda, whatever her name is, used her platform to, I think, professionally and appropriately deflect and saying, listen, this is not the time or place. If you want to talk to me privately, that's fine. We can discuss this. Or if you want to do this in some sort of political forum, that's great. But this is not the place nor time when we're talking about my performance in the tennis match. Like, why do people care what I think about President Trump or representative this or senator that? This is about talking about my performance in the tennis match. But when social media does have its rightful place, it could be very useful when used positively, reconnecting with old friends, using it as a platform to seek, help for, let's say, health reasons. Let's say law enforcement using social media to, let's say, to help solve a crime. Again, I haven't really been following the news with this whole Nancy Guthrie thing, so I don't know if FBI or the local sheriff have used social media to, help find the suspect. But social media does have its place. I mean, it can be a very useful tool to advertise, to build a business, to grow one's career. But I think when it's manipulated for various reasons, it can really come back to hurt people and harm people. And when it tries to, when people use it to try to send a certain message, a certain agenda, a certain narrative, it can really be detrimental. And that's why, like, for me personally, I have really avoided watching the news. Now, maybe that might make me ignorant of what's going on in the world, but I get enough of exposure by surfing various news medias to know kind of like the important things that's going on. That how that'll impact me directly. And so I think everybody has to kind of be comfortable with how much social media they want to expose themselves to. But I think they also should understand that when it starts impacting them negatively, there needs to be some kind of limits, whether parental limits or even as a grown individual putting your own limits. And it's gotten to the point where even in the DSM, it's become a topic of concern where, there's something called internet gaming disorder, where people who like Minecraft and other kind of internet games, I wouldn't be surprised that there's going to be a similar, mental health issue of people being addicted to social media, spending their whole days posting on, various social media sites, and then basically taking everything that's on social media as the gospel truth, and believing. For example, I have another. Trying to think of there was an athlete that recently was talking about needing some type of transplant. I can't remember who it was, but I remember one of my friends sending me a Facebook. I remember. It was Bernie Kosar. Bernie Kosar, famous quarterback, then went on with the Cleveland Browns and Dallas Cowboys. He's in need of a liver transplant. I remember I was going to the North Carolina State game back in November, and the person I was going with is a close friend of mine. His wife's a therapist, and we're very close, and he used to be he played linebacker for the Canes back in the mid to late 70s. This is even before Howard Schnellenberger. This was, I think George Myra Sr. was the coach, or may have been. But he sent me this and I had met Bernie Kosar at a game a few years ago, and nice guy, but my friend sends me this Facebook post that Bernie Kosar died. And I was like, well, like what the heck? What are you talking about? Bernie Kosar died. It seemed like a real news event. It was on some Facebook posting that Bernie Kosar, in need of a liver transplant, died. And I'm like, I can't believe this is true. I'm sure that if it was, it'd be like headline news on the South Florida news stations. And I'm like looking at, Channel 6, Channel 10, Channel 4. I'm looking at the Palm Beach stations, like seeing the news outlets, like, is Bernie Kosar dead? Nothing. So here's again, like, you want to call it fake news, misinformation, whatever word you want to use, but this is where social media can kind of really be, negative and manipulated and used for the wrong reasons. But when it's used for the right reasons, could be very constructive, healthy, and beneficial. But people really need to a man needs to know his, think of the words of Dirty Harry, a man needs to know his limitations. And, social media can become, an addiction no different than gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, you name it. And when it becomes like an addiction, it really can have a negative impact. And so that's why I limit myself to social media, being exposed to it. That's why I've limited myself in terms of how much social media I'm plastered on, because I appreciate my privacy. I don't need people to know where I'm at all times. And sometimes I don't want to be found or located. I enjoy kind of sometimes anonymity. And that's kind of like what you lose if you have this like huge, social media presence and people expect things from you, and sometimes that can be unrealistic. So, and that's again, closing point is I don't want to make it seem like I'm all, a Debbie Downer on social media. There is a benefit for it when used properly. So on that note, I'm going to be signing off for another episode of Dr. Mensch. This is Dr. Gil Lichtstein, aka Dr. Mensch. Until next week, wish everybody having a good rest of your Monday and a good rest of your week. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us for Dr. Mensch with Dr. Gil Lichtstein, helping you navigate the world of mental health with clarity and care. If you or someone you love needs support, you're not alone. Treatment works and recovery is possible. To schedule a consultation or discuss non-medication therapies, personalized treatment plans, or psychiatric care, contact Dr. Gil directly at 561-300-4052 or visit docgil.com. You can catch us each week on South Florida Oldies Radio and streaming across all social platforms. Until next time.